Nutty Disco Dave, a man of many contradictions. On the one hand, he adores anyone who strokes his ego, lavishing praise upon those willing to pucker up and kiss his metaphorical backside. But when it comes to those of different races, particularly the intelligent or outspoken, the mask slips and the nastiness oozes out. It's almost as if his fragile sense of superiority crumbles in the face of people who are both different and more capable than him. Imagine Nutty at the local pub, pint in hand, rambling on about how he's clearly the superior being because he's, well, Nutty Disco Dave. Yeah, every time someone with a bit more brain power or charisma walks in, you can see him seething in the corner. You might overhear him muttering under his breath about how these people are just too clever for their own good or trying to dredge up some scandalous dirt on them to tarnish their reputation. His favorite game, of course, is to play detective, searching high and low for any hypocrisy in those he secretly envies. He's got his magnifying glass out, peering through the lens of jealousy like some bumbling Inspector Clouseau, hoping to find something, anything, to discredit them. The real kicker? Nutty's got what the shrinks call a superiority complex. He genuinely believes other races should bow down before him, not because of anything he's accomplished, mind you, but simply because he thinks his own race is inherently better. A bizarre mix of insecurity and delusion, really. His thought process goes something like this. Well, of course they should listen to me. I'm obviously the right kind of person to be in charge. Those people, they need someone like me to keep them in line. It's almost tragic if it weren't so utterly ridiculous. Now, apply a little British satire to this. Imagine Nutty standing there with his overinflated ego puffing out his chest like a rooster, only to trip over his own shoelaces. His superiority complex doesn't stop him from being wildly insecure, which is why every time he encounters someone more intelligent or of a different race, he spins into a vortex of petty vengeance. He starts digging for non existent scandals, much like a man desperately looking for loose change under the couch cushions. And when he finds nothing, he simply makes it up. After all, why let reality spoil his fun? The irony is that while Nutty thinks others should succumb to his grandeur, he spends most of his time groveling to anyone willing to give him the validation he craves. His racial bias, built on shaky ground, crumbles whenever someone brighter or bolder shows up. And that's when his venomous, jealous side comes out. He's like a schoolyard bully, afraid of anyone who stands taller than him. And when he can't physically bring them down, he resorts to lies, gossip, and bitterness. In a nutshell, Nutty Disco Dave's superiority complex is as fragile as a teacup in a bull shop. And when it shatters, his true colors come out. Nutty, you see, doesn't just reserve his disdain for those of different races. His deep rooted insecurity runs so far that anyone who shows the slightest bit of competence makes him feel threatened. It's as though he walks around with a mental scorecard, and every time someone achieves something he could never dream of, be it in intellect, charisma, or moral integrity, he mentally scribbles them down as an enemy. But here's where it gets even funnier. Nutty's so delusional in his superiority that he never stops to think that maybe, just maybe, he's the one at fault. Instead, he doubles down, convinced that these people are somehow in the wrong simply because they don't pander to his delusions of grandeur. And when Nutty encounters someone outspoken, particularly of a different race, oh, he absolutely cannot bear it. The fact that they don't cower before him, but instead stand tall, voicing their opinions with clarity and confidence, sends him spiraling into a full blown tizzy. In his mind, it's unacceptable that someone who isn't like him has the audacity to speak out, let alone be respected. You can almost picture Nutty fuming in his favorite armchair, clenching his fists, muttering about how they don't know their place. But here's where it gets comically tragic. Nutty often fancies himself a champion of good values. He'll boast to anyone who'll listen about his deep sense of morality, all while harboring such deep rooted prejudice that he can't see his own hypocrisy He's that classic character who demands respect while giving none. And his idea of moral superiority crumbles under the weight of his actions. What Nutty really can't stand, though, is when someone, especially someone from a different background, proves themselves to be superior in ways that truly matter: intelligence, kindness, or honesty. Those virtues are like kryptonite to him, and his fragile ego just can't cope. So, in true Nutty fashion, he tries to discredit them. It's almost as if he's part of some strange race based competition in his own head where he's constantly trying to win a game. No one else is playing. He's obsessed with the idea that someone somewhere might just be better than him, and that thought keeps him awake at night. Now, what fuels this strange superiority complex? One could speculate that Nutty has a long history of being on the losing end of things. He might have been slighted in the past, overlooked in favor of more deserving people. Maybe he's carried this resentment for years, building up his image of a world where his race, and by extension he, should automatically be seen as the correct one. It's possible he's crafted this view to compensate for past disadvantages, which makes his need to feel superior even more desperate. But instead of acknowledging his shortcomings or working to improve, he lashes out at others, especially those who, by every standard, surpass him. In Nutty's mind, it's not about merit, it's about entitlement. He truly believes that others, particularly those from different backgrounds, should just fall in line and respect him for who he thinks he is. And yet, ironically, those very people he despises probably wouldn't think twice about him if he didn't constantly wave his superiority flag, desperately begging for validation. And we can't forget his special hatred for the intelligent ones. It's no secret that Nutty's intellect doesn't quite match up to his inflated sense of self. So when someone outsmarts him, especially if they're from a race he secretly, or not so secretly, looks down on, he goes into full meltdown mode. He scrambles to find any dirt, even if he has to fabricate it. He's like a child losing at chess, flipping the board in frustration, insisting the other player cheated because in his mind he should have won. And there's something even darker at play here. Nutty doesn't just dislike these people, he resents their very existence. It's as though their success or their intelligence is a personal affront to him. He feels wrong simply because they thrive, and his sense of vengeance isn't just about proving them wrong. It's about erasing their success so he can feel superior once more. In the end, Nutty Disco Dave is a tragic figure, someone so consumed by his need to feel above others that he's trapped in a loop of resentment, envy, and anger. His racist views are just the icing on the cake, another tool he uses to elevate himself while digging his own intellectual and moral grave. The real comedy here is that in his desperate quest to prove his superiority, Nutty only exposes how pitifully small he truly is,